What's up guys, and welcome back. Today on Trent's Garage we're starting off a little bit differently. Before we head outside, I'm drinking my AG1, and today's video is actually sponsored by AG1. Now for those of you guys that don't know what AG1 is, it is an absolutely amazing little drink packaged in this nice powder where all you have to do is take one scoop every day and you get 75 vitamins and minerals from whole food sourced ingredients. AG1 is like foundational nutrition, or like nutritional insurance. You can eat a nice healthy diet, you can have a nice breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but if there's gaps in your diet, you want to be able to fill it with something very easily. Instead of taking a bunch of vitamins or taking a bunch of supplements, you can just drink AG1 every morning. Honestly, the way it makes me feel is that I'm Popeye and AG1 is my spinach. I love the taste of it. Every morning it's like a refreshing flavor that I get to have before my coffee, before food. I drink my AG1 and it gives me that nice start to my day. So if you've heard about AG1 before and you're on the fence and you're thinking about trying it, right now is a great time to try it. And if you haven't heard of it before, you should definitely jump on this deal. You can click the link in my description, and right now you'll actually get 5 free travel packs and up to a 1-year supply of vitamin D free with your first purchase. So I wanted to say thanks again to AG1 for sponsoring my video today. Now I'm gonna drink my AG1 and we're heading out to the garage. Today on Trent's Garage, we are gonna be trying to do maybe some cross-member stuff. I think we might get into trying to mount our fuel cell. It would be really nice to get the fuel cell mounted and then get all of my harness hooked up and like throw a battery in here and see if this engine actually works. I have no idea if it's gonna work or not, so before I build like an entire cage around the engine and make everything difficult to take out and fix problems if I do run into problems, it would be smart to see if we can start this thing and get it going. So I think today I'm gonna unpack my fuel cell. We're gonna try and get it mounted on the back of the frame, back behind the cab, and hopefully everything goes nice and smooth. Oh, this thing is heavy, boy. That looks cool. So the main reason that I actually bought this fuel cell is because this fuel cell is actually made or manufactured for like a Jeep JK or JL. I can't exactly remember. It might even be a TJ. I don't really remember. But the port right here where you mount your fuel pump is the same exact size port, or like very, very close to the port that the Toyota factory like sending unit fits inside of. So I saw some guy do a write-up and he's like, I bought this tank. I used my original Toyota pump. I think he had to grind like a tiny little bit, but he got his entire sending unit in there, which means you get your original fuel gauge, you get your original fuel lines, you get the original fuel pump. There's no custom gibbly garb that you gotta go through to try and get your fuel up to your engine. So, I guess let's unpackage it. So even though I'm gonna be using the factory sending unit, I actually have an aftermarket AEM like high flow pump. So that fuel pump is gonna be able to supply more fuel pressure and a higher like gallon per minute, because once you supercharge this, it requires more fuel and bigger injectors and all types of stuff. So I've got the new pump somewhere in my shelf of parts, and I have a new fuel pump sending unit because the original sending unit in the crash actually ended up making the sending unit shaped at like a 20-degree angle, and I was like, oh, this is funny that this is like has this weird bend in it, and then I realized, oh no, that's because whatever they hit so hard it bent the entire sending unit. So I got a new like aftermarket sending unit that just is replacing the Toyota factory sending unit, and then I'm gonna put the new pump in there, get it slapped in here, and it'll be ready to go. But first we gotta get this thing mounted, which means I've got to build a bracket that holds that right there. That might be a little interesting. All right, so if we're gonna be taking this mounting bracket and trying to mount it here, how exactly I wanna do this in like a nice, easy, clean way. And I wouldn't mind doing like some type of X brace and then have like one bolt land in each part of the X, but I'm afraid that those are gonna run into my fish plates up here. So I think maybe I'll do a piece of my 1x3 straight on the back here, and then I'll X out of the middle, and maybe that will give me a little bit of X bracing and rigidity in the rear part of the frame, and also give me 4 mounting points for the bolts for the actual fuel cell. Just not 100% sure yet. Alright, so kind of what I'm envisioning is that bar sitting there. There'll be 4 bolts that hold that side of the fuel cell on. And then I could just do another lateral bar here, but I think what would be a lot stronger and better and give a little bit better rigidity in all directions is if I went from the center point here and I came out at an angle and caught this bolt, and then from the center point here came out at an angle and caught that bolt, and then attached at the end of the frame there. I think that would make this back section a lot more rigid and less bendy, less twisty. So I think just to make this a little bit easier, instead of trying to mount all of my bracket holes and stuff like that up with the actual support beams and putting tabs on there so that this can be bolted to the frame, I think I'm actually just gonna weld this plate, this bottom plate, to my actual support pieces. I'll have my bars come out that way, and I'll weld this to the frame, not like crazy everywhere it touches weld, but just a couple stitch welds. That way if I ever need to cut it off, it'll be pretty easy to cut off. But that way I can use these holes here for the bolts that are supposed to hold the brackets onto the actual fuel cell. Then I don't have to worry about all this extra fabrication just so that this is removable. That being said, I guess I can go ahead and start measuring my angles for my tube and cutting my tube and getting those pieces ran and tacked in place. And I can tack this in place. We can throw the fuel cell on there and maybe start looking at some fuel lines. They might be off a little bit. I think it'll be all right. All right, moment of truth. Right there on that flat section. Ah! It's beautiful. Kind of. It's kind of beautiful.
I was gonna fake it till I made it, but you called me out. Expectations, so you turned around.
All right, I've got my little cross member in here. I've got it squared up and leveled out with the top of the frame so that that plate can sit right on top of it. Go ahead and get it tacked in.
How could you talk about forever to a guy like me? Surprised how you could live this. Guess I couldn't see. Now I'm getting letters from Wyoming. Keep my TV on.
Now I'm kind of running into a little bit of a debate is, since this is basically just a cross member that's going to be part of the frame, should I fully weld the cross member in and then just tack my fuel cell in, or should I just tack everything? The problem is, once I put this plate for the fuel cell on top of here and tack it, I won't be able to get to these welds here. So I'm kind of leaning more towards just fully welding this cross member in. I don't think my drive line will ever come up this high. I don't think that my differential of the rear axle will ever come up this high, this far inside the frame rails. So I think it's pretty safe where this actual cross member is, that I'm not gonna have any other complications with it. So I think I may as well just go ahead and fully weld it in. And then once that's fully solid and welded, I can throw this mount for the fuel cell on there and get it tacked in place, we can go ahead and throw our fuel cell on, maybe start working on our fuel pump and getting some fuel lines ran. I think I'm leaning more towards just fully welding. All right, well, probably against the advice and wishes of people with a lot more experience than me, I'm gonna go ahead and fully weld this in. I think this cross member is gonna be in the right spot, and I don't think it's gonna bother anything. There'll be definitely more stuff added on here and around here, so this won't be the end of the frame fab here in the back, but I'm gonna weld these pieces on so that I can get this plate tacked in place. Yeah, so here goes nothing. Fully welded, I just have to do the back side of my square tubing and the bottom, and it'll be fully welded in. All right, it's solid, fully welded. Too bad. I guess one rookie mistake that I made is I didn't really like test fit much. I didn't make sure that the fuel cell wasn't gonna like run into the body over here. I think that looks pretty good. That's all the tacking I'm gonna do right now. When I get to where, you know, I feel like this is exactly where the fuel cell is gonna go and we don't ever need to move it or anything like that, I'll kind of fully weld these in with just some stitch welds so that this doesn't come off, you know, getting shaken around on the trail or anything like that. But as for our purposes right now, this is fully mounted. So I'm gonna go ahead and get the fuel cell thrown up on there, and then I am going to unpackage our new fuel pump and try and get all of that stuff assembled, and then we'll start seeing if our fuel lines are actually going to connect to the engine and make it all the way back to the fuel cell, or if we have to make some type of extension. The thing that I'm a little bit concerned about is that I read that the bolt pattern on here was the same on the Toyota as it was for the Jeep. So I think since this comes with this kit, which like basically has all of the mounting stuff for the Jeep, I was assuming I would just be able to throw this on and then throw my fuel pump in there and clamp it down. The thing I'm concerned about now is I don't know if that's the case. I don't know if there was like some parts that were on my original fuel tank that I needed to take off so that I could make these work together. The problem is my original fuel tank is long gone. So we might be learning the hard way here. Not 100% sure, but we'll go ahead and start fiddling with things and see how far we get. I'm gonna get my new fuel pump out of this box, and then I've got my old fuel pump that's damaged from the crash over there. And then we've got our fuel cell. And I'm gonna try and see if I can put all the pieces of this puzzle together and make something work. I'm just not really sure whether I can or not. We're gonna give it our best. That's looking a little promising. My guess is that that is supposed to fit in there. And it doesn't. I know that there was supposed to be some minor modification. Also, you can see the angle that this is at. It's not supposed to be at an angle. It's supposed to be straight. It's supposed to look like this. That's how hard the impact was. Must have been a really gnarly crash. It's like almost there. It's off by like a 16th, maybe 3/32. of a diameter. If I cut that tab off and I kind of buzz this thing around the edge just a little bit, it should fit into that gap. And then I'm thinking probably put a bead of silicone on here, press this down on top of that, and then clamp this ring down on top of that. I don't know. I'm really nervous, to be honest. Mostly because I've never done this before, but also I'm like doing something that's not really, it's not Toyota's specifications, it's not Moto Built's specifications, because this is built for a Jeep. So I'm just like kind of winging it and like trying to make things work. We'll see if I can make things work. The trick is to take tiny amounts off so that you don't like accidentally take too much off. But this is one of those things where like I generally, first of all, it's perfect. But I generally will do like a tiny bit and it doesn't fit, and a tiny bit and it doesn't fit. And then I'm like, all right, there's a lot left. And then I'll do like a bunch, and then there's like a giant gap. So there is a teeny bitty, teeny tiny amount of play in there, but it's basically perfect. So I think I've done the modification that needs to be done in order for this thing to fit into this fuel cell. I have this AEM fuel pump that's like an aftermarket fuel pump that does like 100 gallons per minute or something crazy. And I bought that. It's somewhere on this shelf. So I'm gonna go ahead and find that, pop this case open, swap the fuel pump out. Then we'll actually be able to do our silicone and get this thing mounted into the fuel cell. And then we'll see if our fuel lines work. All right. There she is, high flow in-tank fuel pump. Supposedly, this will just mount right into my factory pump housing there. I got the factory fuel pump out. I only stabbed myself in the thumb with my my dentist tool there really hard one time, and I'm barely bleeding, so I'll take that as a victory. This fuel pump here should be almost an exact replacement. I'm hoping that I can just, hopefully I don't need that. Put that on there. All right, well, I have some bad news. I disassembled the pump housing. I got the factory pump out. I got my aftermarket pump, and I started, feeding my aftermarket pump into the housing. And at the very end, it was like, it was lined up, but it was like very tight. So I gave it a couple taps with the hammer, and I ended up damaging the pump. So needless to say, this will not work. I'm gonna have to order a new pump. When that comes, I can hopefully get the broken pump out of that housing and get the new pump in there. Or maybe I can salvage some parts off of the factory pump that is bent over here. And then hopefully I'll be able to do it with having to rebuy minimal parts. But as for now, I can't fully install this fuel pump because it's broken. And so that would not be very useful of our time. So I'm not exactly sure what to do now. The fuel pump or the fuel cell installation is kind of put on hold a little bit. I think I'm going to take these brackets and maybe get the fuel cell mounted on the plate with some of the bolts, and then actually I don't even know if it came with the bolts to do that. I think it just came with the bolts to mount the rings, so I'm probably gonna have to buy bolts to put the clamps on. We might just be running into a wall here. This is a little bit frustrating. I'm gonna grab the fuel lines and maybe hook those up to the engine and then see if I can get those to stretch all the way back here to our fuel cell to see if we're in trouble there as well. So I guess let's go ahead and do that. This is my factory fuel lines here. We're gonna see if we slide these up, connect them to the fuel lines in the engine bay. Let's go see how they look in the back. Looks like they're about 4 inches short. So I could just cut that and put an extension in there. Then I can still reuse all of my factory fittings. That's what I really want to retain, is just like easy, quick disconnect factory fittings. And I don't want to have to make, you know, new fuel lines to go from A to Z. But like with most things in this build, it's turning out that I've got to do a little bit more custom work than I bargained for, and that's all right. I think we might be calling it a day today. I know it's a short video. I really apologize. We did get this cross member welded up in the back. We got the fuel cell mounted. The fuel line's not reaching is also a little bit of a problem, but I'll deal with that another day. I'm not actually that upset about it. I am gonna jump online and do some research about the fuel pump, maybe get a new fuel pump coming, and we'll try and fix that in a future video. But if you guys enjoyed coming along on this adventure today, make sure you show me by giving a big thumbs up on today's video. Consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't already, and I will see you guys on the next one.